Roberta, what has your research shown you that reality is?
This was what I started out to do when I had my experience of light in childhood. I needed to understand how it all fit together, and there was no way to find that out then. I had to sort of piece it together myself. I wasn't able to make complete sense of it, and I'm still working on that, of course, but I wasn't able to even get to an initial place of making perfect sense until we had Quantum Physics for Dummies books in the early part of the 21st century. And suddenly it all makes sense, because the physics that operates in the greater reality is the physics that operates here. I'm going to speak in very simple terms, because I'm a simple guy, about what it is and I'm speaking of a number of people who have all done the same research and come to the same conclusions. What have we learned? There are at least 6 levels of post-death reality. Each of them is large about approximately as the universe is. And then there was the material level, which we think is the lowest level. All of these levels of reality exist exactly in the same place. How is that possible? They're all energy-based, including this one. Most of the afterlife levels, except for the 6th, are as solid as this. In fact, people tell us who are there that that's the real reality, this is not. When we go there, we think that's not possible, but then apparently when we look around, we say, oh yeah, this is more real. But it's all real and solid. How is that possible? If you had a TV in this room, you would discover there were 100 different channels here. Those channels are all at slightly different vibratory rates. Turn on the TV, pick up a channel. Right now, you're tuned to the material level of reality and to that body, and that's why you think you're in that body. But it's just your avatar for exploring and having experiences in this alien place. It's not where you live, and your mind is not in it. It's connected to it, it runs it, it picks up signals, but it's not in it. When you die, your mind just tunes to a slightly higher vibratory rate, and it picks up a whole new solid reality, just as you could do with your TV set. That's the easiest way to understand, from our perspective, what reality is. It's all part of one energy. The best description I've read of it is, and this is what God is, it's an energy-like potentiality without size, without form, infinitely powerful, alive the same way your mind is alive because your mind is part of it, highly emotional and therefore probably self-aware. That's it. And that mind brings forth everything. This reality, the after-death realities, all of reality. It's all in that mind. More and more scientists are stumbling toward these truths, but it's difficult for them because they're so afraid of finding God and having religionists win. The problem is religionists can't win because their view of God is totally wrong. They see God as built in human image. God is not human. God has no human failings. God is only love. Infinite love beyond our ability to comprehend it. I call it affinity. It's affinity for itself, and we're part of itself. So they're not going to really, neither science nor religion wins. There's a truth that can be informed by both sides, and that truth is all there is. I do a radio program called Seek Reality. It can be found on iTunes. Seek Reality has guests on week after week that just talk about different aspects of what that one great reality is. And with like any big discovery, this, which I think is actually the third wave of physics, consciousness-based physics, this is big. You can't talk about it in a little summary. And what I've given you is really sort of just cliff notes to that little summary. But if you think about it that way, if you stop thinking, where is heaven? It's right here. It's right where we are. If you stop thinking this is solid, well, it's not. It's all energy-based. And if you start thinking of all of it as basically a thought in eternal mind, I call it mind because that's what Max Planck called it. He was the father of quantum physics. All of these different disciplines are coming together into one glorious central understanding that we live in only one reality, and that reality, frankly, is perfectly good.
Mm-hmm. In the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas, Jesus is asked, when will the kingdom come? And he replies, the kingdom of the Father is spread out upon the face of the earth, and men do not see it. Why do men not see it?
Because the energy-like potentiality of which we are a part, our minds, are very creative. We are capable of creating negativity. And we on this planet have created so much negativity that it gets in the way of our clear seeing. I mean, we can hate. God doesn't ever hate. God is incapable of that. Our minds can create so much bad. So, demons exist. They're all humanly created. We can create so much negative that it gets in the way of our perceiving what's true. But when we get the negativity out of the way, I meet people who say, oh, I knew this all along, because they were thinking purely and they got it without even being told what was going on.
Roberta, could you talk to us about what your research has shown you to be the experience of dying?
It's surprising when the mortality rate is 100%. Many people don't understand how dying happens. It's a very easy, natural process. Getting there can be hard. I call my book The Fun of Dying, and some people who had cancer and stuff said, nah, it's not fun. Well, it's not fun to get there. When you get there, it's blissful. It's the happiest time for many people of their whole lives. As you get close to your time of death, you begin to see people you used to think were dead. Your mom, your cat, they usually appear in the upper corners of the room. And if you're with a dying person and they seem to be looking at a corner and just sort of zoned out, they're talking in their mind with their dead loved ones. Sometimes they come down and they walk around in the room. They're solid, they're young, they're healthy, they're happy. And when you see the first one, you know you're going to survive your death too. And so you relax into the experience. As you start to die, think of your body as a set of Matryoshka dolls, Russian dolls. And the outer couple of layers are going to stay, those outer shells, but there are 3 or 4 inner ones that are going to leave. And as you're starting to die, your body starts to separate internally. People say it feels like little threads are breaking. It doesn't hurt. It just is interesting to feel this happening. They know they're in the process. They're not afraid. Nothing about it is fearful. As they get all that energy that's inside you gets into your chest area, it leaves either through the top of your head or through your chest. People who've seen that happen say it looks like a glowing mist. And it forms into what looks like a human body that's still attached by what the Bible calls a silver cord to your material body. That cord is going to break. It's been very tough your whole life long. We all travel out of body every night to do a lot of things, and that cord stayed tight. But when it's time to die, the cord frays and then it breaks. That's the moment of death. You're already out of your body. You don't feel a blessed thing. But it's very important that you stay with the people who came to get you. That's why they're there. Mom, Jesus, whoever came for you, or the crowd, they're there to bring you to the next level of reality, which apparently doesn't easily happen automatically. We need help. The risk is, if you focus on the fact that people around the bed are going, oh, he's dead, or oh, whoa, find a pulse. If you focus on them and try to say, Mom, I'm okay, darling, I'll see you soon. If you do that, you can lose your ability. It lowers your spiritual rate back to the level of the vibratory rate of this level of reality. You can lose your ability to perceive your rescuers. That's how we make ghosts. You don't want to do that. So whatever you do, and if you remember nothing else that I ever say, go with your rescuers. They will take you where you're going. It feels like going into a mist, and if you look back, you'll see that the room you were in starts to look kind of vague and vapory, the way you'd imagine heaven would look. That's disappearing, and the mist clears and you find yourself in a whole new, gorgeous, solid reality. That easy.
The training of a physician is often seen as really kind of atheistic. They focus on physical causes. And so when you're coming to the end of your life and you're assisted by a physician, you're not going to get much insight into what the death experience is like. So how can we put people at ease when they begin to die? What is necessary to change the view of death that is pervasive in this culture?
It's not just as the physicians, it's also the hospices. People have been trying to get the fun of dying into hospices, and it's not allowed. We're not allowed to put any notion at all into the minds of people dying about where they're going, what's happening to them, or anything, which is tragic. All we can do is respect the person dying. Dying in this culture is tough. I just read an article about the worst ways to die, and it went through all the horrendous tortures of the past. And of all of them, dying as an American in a hospital was found to be the worst. Worse than being hanged, drawn, and quartered. That's kind of embarrassing when you think about it, because we should know better. if we trust the needs of people, this is a natural thing. You might delay death, but if you delay death and prolong life poorly and painfully, you haven't helped anyone. Let them die.
Roberta, from your research, you found that there are 6 different levels in the afterlife state. Could you talk to us about those? Yeah,
and it's not... Everybody who's studied the afterlife has come to about the same conclusion. 6-ish. So I've seen people say 7. And they're not stripes. They're like a rainbow, so that there are intermediate kind of places too. Remember, each of them is enormous. Each of them apparently is the size of the whole universe. So we're not talking anything cramped here. But when you die, your spiritual growth, your spiritual level, and that really is how well you've learned to love and forgive. We don't know what else there's some other stuff we're going to learn, but this is kindergarten. If we learn to do that well, we'll get to level 3 or 4 when we die. Level 1, the lowest level, is what Jesus called the outer darkness, where there's wailing and gnashing of teeth. He's exactly right. It's like midnight on a garbage dump in wintertime with ravening dogs around you that once were people. It's the most horrible thing you could imagine. You can't get out of it on your own. It's the punishment level. Every single person there put himself there, without exception, as far as I've been able to determine. Above that is level 2, which is not punishment, but is really not very bright. Levels 3 through 5 are what the Vikings called the Summerland. It's beautiful, much more beautiful than the Earth, but it looks like the Earth. It's solid, it's permanent, nothing decays or dies there. We're all young and healthy. There are infinite entertainments. You don't have to, of course, work. You don't have to eat. There's no darkness unless you want it. It doesn't rain unless you want rain. There's a place you can snowboard, though, because I have a friend who does it. It's just beautiful. The 6th level is what they call the source level. I've heard it called not the source level, called the causal level. It's called the teaching level, called the mental level. Apparently, very little of it is physical. It's virtually all people who are there are so advanced they've gone beyond the need for what the sort of sense of physicality that we seem to have. There's a 7th level that they tell us about. I don't call it another level. It's the source level. It's the highest vibratory rate of which we're aware, and that's basically God. The dead call it God. They say no one ever gets to see God. God is much too powerful. But in reality, what we're coming to understand is that God encompasses everything. We are all part, basically, of the mind of God. So you might call that the source. It's where the light comes from. I had these 2 amazing experiences of light, much brighter than sunlight, very white, very bright. And that's where all of that light comes from. As it filters down through it's very bright, of course, at the 6th level and 5th level. Still very bright at the 3rd level. In the 2nd level, where I think I actually met my father, I think that's where he was for a time. It's not as bright at all. And it's dark on the lowest level. Mm-hmm. But remember, they're all in one place. We're not talking an onion here. We're talking just different channels on a television, basically. Mm-hmm. That's all it is.
Is the soul's placement on these different levels exclusively dependent on his ability to love and forgive in this life, or is it possible to somehow learn and grow in the afterlife level?
They tell us it's very much harder there. It's like becoming a weightlifter and you've got no gym. There's nothing to push against you. There's no way to learn to love and to forgive in a place where everybody's doing it anyway. So it's much harder. But some people say that it's possible to make that kind of growth. What they do to do it is a lot of service work, a lot of rescuing of people in the lowest level. That helps you to grow spiritually. They try to rescue people on Earth who are earthbound or otherwise have gotten stuck somewhere. They act as guides for people who are having difficult lives, because spirit guides really do a lot of work for us. Mm-hmm. So you can, in service, you can grow. But one lifetime will probably, if you want to talk time, although there's no time there, would be maybe worth 1,000 years of service.
I think it was Socrates who said that the body is the prison house of the soul. What is it about being incarnated in a body that prevents spiritual awareness and spiritual growth?
Well, being a body fosters spiritual growth, because again, it's something to push against. You you don't intuitively know. When you get there, you know the truth. So it's very hard to fool yourself into thinking you have to work hard, because without time, you can spend your entire eternity on level 3 and it doesn't matter. Here, it matters. Here, you're trying to get ahead. It's tough. You've got these people you've got to deal with that you can't stand. You've got to learn to get beyond that and love people anyway. So it's just much easier to make the progress here, and then you realize the fruits of that progress when you graduate.
Mm-hmm. But since this body and this world is a prison house, what kind of catalysts would assist people into waking up?
That's what the great teachers are for. The greatest teacher of all is Jesus. If we just read the Gospels, he's telling us truths we now can independently confirm about what's true about reality. So all I can say is, to not Christianity, which doesn't teach us these things, but the Gospels, which does. That's what I would do to try to learn what's true. We've confirmed that everything he says, except maybe 5%, is exactly what the dead tell us to.
What does the world look like to an awakened soul?
I don't think there's a moment of awakening. I think it's a process. I can just tell you from my own experience, I was not a very nice person when I was younger. Before I figured this stuff out, I was living for myself, and I was pretty selfish about it. And everybody who is living for him or herself is by definition not very well spiritually advanced. As I began to learn this stuff, it began to be more important to me to grow spiritually than to have money or to be popular or belong to a club or any of those things. I started not caring about those things. The most spiritually awakened people I know live very simply. They love people very deeply, and they love everyone, and they have compassion even for people that are mean to them. They just stop caring about these physical trappings. To the most awakened people I know, and more people that I'm meeting, and I guess I feel this way too, we see a plan. We understand that we're always safe in eternal hands. People will say to me, what if this or that bad thing? And I would say, if it's meant to happen, then let it happen. If it's not meant to happen, God will not allow it to happen. You lose fear. Fear of death is the base fear. Once you get rid of that, you have no fear of anything. And that's a glorious thing. People who are spiritually awakened don't kill themselves. They aren't hastening their death. They know they're here for a reason, and they're trying to fulfill their reason. But they don't fear death at all. I mean, when it happens, I'll be delighted.
Yeah. Do people plan their lives before they come here?
That's a great question. Yes, virtually all of us, a few very low-level souls apparently don't, but virtually all of us carefully plan a lesson, series of lessons for our lives. We do it in conjunction with our guides, with the people who will be in our lives, most of whom we've been in lives with before, and their guides. And we try to plan really tough. The more advanced we are already, with the more tough stuff we plan in. I want all these bad things to happen because I'll just ace them out. I'm going to get on that tough machine. And so the more advanced people usually have to have their life plans reviewed by a council of sixth-level beings who will just help them tone it down to something that will not break them. Because obviously it would be good not to have your muscles actually worn out and broken. And people kill themselves sometimes when they can't surmount a tough lesson. But you see bad things happening all the time. When bad things happen in your life, virtually always, you can't say anything 100%, virtually always those are planned by the people having that experience as a way to grow. And that includes the death of children. It includes every horrible illnesses and everything nasty. People plan that. And they're glad to plan it, and then they do the best with the lesson.
Yeah. I've discovered that from talking with people who've had near-death experiences that they feel they have a mission, they feel they have a purpose, but when they come back to this life, they can't remember what it is. So can you talk to us a bit about purpose and mission?
Yes, I think everybody who's here, if you cared enough to listen this far, you also have a mission. You have something you planned to do before you were born, and you need to find it. I'll tell you how I found mine. In April of 1969, where are we now? 2009. 2009. In April of 2009, you can tell I'm kind of old. In April of 2009, I decided it was time to give my life to God. So I began to pray. I pray gratitude affirmations. Thank you for giving me work to do. Thank you for showing me how to do it. I just prayed that 2-3 times a day. Within a few months, I was writing The Fun of Dying. And after that, all these things have happened that have allowed me to shape a message, which I am confident is what I came here to do. Until I started giving my life to God, thank you for basically telling me what to do, and I'll do it, whatever it is. But claim your purpose. Thank you for giving me work to do. You've given it to me. I know that you've given it to me. Thank you for giving it, and then thank you for showing me. Just thank, and you will get it all. It all comes to you, whatever your purpose is. And we are all parts of one gigantic army of people, all working to bring an awakening of consciousness to the planet. It's going to be a new world within this century, and it's because of everybody who's listening.
What is your understanding of time?
Well, my understanding of time is sort of put together from what the dead tell us and what we learn from our study of the greater reality that we actually are living in, even though this is only one layer of it. This is the only layer of reality in which there is matter, its correlate energy, time, and space. Time and space are just as much artifacts of this level of reality as are matter and energy, the energy that is the correlate of matter. So once you leave this level of reality, there is no objective time. Eternity is the norm, and eternity is kind of static. You can choose to experience time, and they do. They basically are especially the period I've studied is a period right after death, which can extend for 1 trillion years. But that, when we're closely associated with the notion of time that exists here, we tend to live in a time-ish sort of environment, but we can choose not to experience it at all. We can have the sense of no time passing because, as I say, it's an artifact, it's a creation, it's not an objective fact of reality.
Is there a how to this? Is there a way to experience this timelessness, what you're talking about?
I don't know how you would do it here. There may be meditators, of which I've never been one, I can't do it myself, but meditators have said that they get that sense of timelessness when they're deep in meditation. But it's a sense of it. When we are in, just as our bodies are made of matter and our minds are attached to that matter, we're attached to the time and the space that is part of that matter. So I don't think you can really get it till you're out of your body. Then you really do get it, and it's like, phew, it's so much more relaxing not to have watches exist. It makes it so much more relaxing.
Yeah. You said that in the afterlife state, there's no time and there's no space. Perhaps some people can have a sense for time slowing down or not being present at certain moments, but something that's more difficult is the concept of there is no space. So can you talk to us about that?
I've had people say to me, space is big, and I say, compared to what? We have no reference point for space. In fact, what appears to be the case is that because it's relative to the body, the little tiny microscopic body to which we're attached, it seems bigger. That's why we think it's big. But over and over again, the dead tell us it isn't as big as you think it is. And there's tantalizing evidence that is basically only big enough to be just beyond our ability to perceive it. For example, there was a time years back when I read of an interesting experiment. Someone had pointed a telescope at a part of the universe where there never had been galaxies seen. As far as they knew, there was nothing there. He went back a year later, it was full of billions of stars. So basically they pushed it out so the kids would not think there was an edge to the universe, which I think is typical of what they do. They're just trying to keep us from, messing with the bars of our playpen.
Mm-hmm. The message of Jesus was love, and that can seem deceptively simple, but when put into practice, it might be able to free us from some of the physical constraints. There's one quote at the end of the book The Little Prince by Saint Exupery. It goes something like, it is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. So can you talk to us a bit about the liberating capacities of love which all the great philosophers talk about?
We use the word love in a lot of different ways. in the same word is used for a lot of different things. Love you have your family, being in love. There's a different kind of love, though. As Jesus says, if you love those who love you, where's the merit there? If you're good to the people who are good to you, there's no merit there. If all you love is your family and it's your family against the world, there's no merit at all in that. The fact that you love a few people doesn't get you anywhere. The kind of love that Jesus wants us and that the dead tell us we are supposed to be learning is love for everybody, even the people who are the most unlovable. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. He meant everybody. Everybody, it doesn't matter how nasty they are, an axe murderer, everyone. To look at that person and see that that person is also a part of eternal mind just as you are. We're all part of one being. And to love that person for it, if for nothing else. That's what we're supposed to be learning to do.
Mm-hmm. If we're all part of eternal mind, what makes us separate? What is the value in us being separate? Working apparently separate for our own good if we're a part of one?
The hardest thing for me to understand as I did this research was why we have separation, because that is a good question. It's a great question. I knew about A Course in Miracles, but since I wasn't reading anything before produced after 1950 and A Course in Miracles was dictated in the late 60s, I didn't care about it. I didn't care about it at all. One day I was driving and I came upon a Borders bookstore and I was put into my head, go buy a copy of A Course in Miracles, which I hadn't been setting out to do, but I had a few minutes before an appointment. I went in. There was a shelf in the spiritual area with a completely empty shelf, which you never see in a bookstore. And there was one copy of Course in Miracles facing out. So I thought, well, that's kind of strange. I took it to the counter and it did not exist in their computer. I knew then that my guides were really insistent I'd better read it. So I took a course, and you have to do it with other people. You can't do it with Course in Miracles by yourself very well. But the explanation A Course in Miracles gives at least is an explanation. I don't know if it's right. But A Course in Miracles essentially says that at some point in eternity, this infinitely creative, infinitely powerful potentiality had a random thought, because it's creative, of the possibility that there could ever be separation. And whoosh, there was separation. That's the Big Bang. Instantly, it was ended because it was a stupid idea. But within that micro speck of time, which doesn't exist anyway, were created matter, energy, time, and space, and infinitely separated bits of eternal mind. So basically, if you believe this, I don't know if it's true, but to me it made sense in a kind of way, it was an accident. We're not supposed to be separate. We're not supposed to think we're separate from one another. We are all one being. But now that rescue work is still going on. We and Jesus and others are part of the rescue work of helping us remember who and what we are and bringing us back to where we already are, safe in eternal mind. I don't know if that's right. It may be we won't know until after we graduate to the next level of reality why it happens. And it may be an answer we couldn't understand. Our minds are so limited by our brains and by our bodies. All I know is that it happens, and to use that as an opportunity for spiritual growth. We can't experience love quite the same way if we're not separate. For you to see someone as separate and still love that person as yourself, that's an important spiritual growth. I mean, other people say that God wants to experience that kind of thing. Maybe so. I just don't know.
Roberta, if we plan situations and lessons that we'd like to learn from before we incarnate, and if after we incarnate we live our lives in such a way that we don't fulfill our mission, then how do we deal with the ensuing mess?
Well, understand that we came here with a package. We came here with events planned into our lives with other people, and some of them are primarily for their benefit in terms of growth, some are primarily for ours. And those events are going to happen. We have guides partly to make sure they do happen. If we're supposed to, for example, meet a certain person who will be important in our lives and we just miss the train that gets them there, there'll be another meeting pretty quickly set up. They make it so that we hit our marks in our lives to make the plan work. We work on that plan many nights out of a week because we meet with them. I think of us around a table with the plan laid out, and we're making little changes. We meet every night almost with our spirit guides and with those who are important in our lives and make changes. Then we get back. We forget those meetings. We come back into our lives. We're trying to live our lives. If we can't do something, again, we're meeting during, how do we handle the fact that this person I am during the day is having trouble dealing with his divorce and it's going to break him. I think he's going to kill himself. Well, then we try to come up with ways to get him through that lesson he wasn't quite ready for example. So there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes that we're not aware of to help us get through these tough lessons. Once we are through them, we are a different, stronger person, so that the next one will be able to handle better and better. Life is a learning experience. If you think back to how badly you handle things in your teens and how much better you handle things as you've learned and grown, you can see that. In addition to this sort of life plan stuff, most of us also have spiritual teaching stuff we've planned into our lives, ways that we can help others grow. It could be as simple as having a difficult child and trying to help that child grow, or a difficult friend, or choosing to work in a hospice, or choosing to work as a counselor, or just marrying a difficult person. We are part of other people's lives so that we can help them grow. Some people have teaching roles. Clearly I planned a teaching role, but I certainly planned life lessons. I'm not any more advanced than anybody else. And so what we do is just try to do the best we can with all the guidance we're getting from our guides during the night especially. And I just would like to say it's very important to do the work yourself to understand what's going on. You shouldn't take my word for it. You certainly shouldn't take the word of a minister or any kind of a preacher or anyone who is telling you, I got the answer. I don't have the answer. I'm telling you I've spent the past 50 years working on this. And I think, and also I'm finding what I've discovered is what everybody else who's done the same work has discovered. I think it's right. But do the work yourself. Help yourself to understand what's true, because when you understand what's true, you'll live in accordance to what's true and make the best of your life.
Roberta, thank you so much.